Hello, welcome back to IPBC Asia 2013. A stock exchange for ideas. That's what IPXI, the Intellectual Property Exchange International, promises to do. Launching in June with the first batch of contracts from Philips, marketing their OLED patents. In essence, Philips, being one of the founding members, was, I suppose, a very apt example for how such an exchange of ideas could run. After all, Philips has many patents, continues to produce intellectual property at great rate. So let's see now with Ian McClure from IPXI how things are going. You're a director at IPXI, Ian.
I am.
So here we are now, it's November, you launched in June. How did that initial batch of Philips contracts go?
It's going very well. We launched it obviously June 5th. The initial stages of the marketing was a very public marketing campaign. I think people became familiar with the way that we'll market offerings because we launched it publicly. It was transparent. We started with public webinars. We had over 300 attendees from all over the world for those webinars. And what that did is sparked interest all over the market because of the amount of, the level of transparency that we had demonstrated. The information that we had always promised we would bring forth with the offerings, we did. And it was indicative to find the right parties actually attended some of those webinars and came to us and actually invited meetings. Since we launched that, we have the roadshow has taken a much more focused approach. We have visited many potential licensees, buyers, even investors, and it's going very well. We've met with over 30 companies, many of them many times even. Today, we sit very confident that that's going to be an offering that we will close. And at long last, proof of concept that this is a new way, but not only just new, but it is viable.
Well, let's, before we get into all of those points, lots of points to pick up on. But first, the fact that it's taken several months to get all of the opening tranche from the Philips OLED contracts underway is probably due to the fact that it's a new exchange in a new area. Did you expect things to take this long?
We did. Education is certainly a challenge for us. It's a new model, introducing markets to the IP world to markets. And let's not forget that the intermediary market for IP is only probably a decade old. 2003 we had the first auctions. Since then we've seen a influx of brokerage firms. So it's a natural progression, I think, to get to where we are now, to an exchange model. So the education component is still a challenge, but that's becoming much easier, I think, now. People have understood the model. People are getting the efficiencies that it can create, the benefits that price discovery actually provides. We saw bits of that in things like the Nortel deal. For the first time, you had a large deal that was done in a somewhat transparent manner, where companies knew who other companies were that were bidding. They bid together. They bid on prices that were shown to the other bidders. And that's on one hand a different model, certainly, but shows that this is a natural progression getting to where we are now. So that is a bit of why it's taken some time, because many of the companies that we meet with, the buyers, this is new to them. And we understand that, so we go at their pace right now. Eventually, those types of meetings, the education sessions, won't have to last this long. People will get it. And we're seeing that now. That's happening at a quicker pace now.
Mm-hmm. Our viewers, of course, are a sophisticated audience, and you'd already know how a stock exchange works, so we don't need to necessarily go through those details.
Sure.
But the securitization of IP must be a particular challenge for people who usually look at patent portfolios and where the patents, the licenses are not segmented in that fungible sort of way as securities on an equities exchange or a derivatives exchange are. So do you foresee some fine-tuning for the way that the so-called units, the ULRs that you create out of the IP, how they're structured and how they're then marketed?
Well, what's different, I mean, and this is something that was a misconception for a while about IPXI, and the question was always, how do you commoditize a patent? How do you do that? Well, we're not commoditizing patents. We understand all patents are unique. What you can commoditize is the license to patents. It is a contract. Just like all contracts, futures contracts, they're standardized, and the unit license right is a standardized contract. Now, the beauty of it is that for each deal, that contract can be different. So they must only be standardized within an offering, but not among them. And so within an offering, we have the same flexibilities that any licensing program may have from the outset. The IP owner can help set the terms. There's flexibilities grant back rights and things that they may need. All of that can be included as long as once we go out with the offering, the contracts are standardized. So the unit license right is a unique model, but it's certainly not too complex. It's actually a lot of the nuances of a unit license right are very familiar to anyone that does licensing. The sub-license rights that are actually made transparent and attached to the offering memorandums and the offering that we go out with, it doesn't look much different than many sub-license rights than people see.
Still, I guess the real proof of the pudding of the exchange will happen when there is secondary trading of the units, not just getting the first tranche underway. When do you expect that to kick in?
So secondary trading, the market for secondary trading, will open immediately after we close the offering. And so what we're doing right now for the Philips OLED offering, and recently we launched 2 additional offerings from JP Morgan Chase Bank in a very different technology sector, the financial services sector. Those are both offerings that are in the roadshow stage right now. So the analogy is to an equity offering for a company, and maybe use something familiar like the Twitter offering or the Facebook offering. We are out gathering feedback from the potential buyers right now about reasonable price, about the assets, and once we gather all that feedback, we'll come back to the IP owner and say, here's what the entire market has said to us, and here's where we think we can close this offering. Once that happens, the next day the market is open for trading. And so literally we have a platform, an electronic trading platform, completely operational, and it is standing by and ready to open once we close the offerings.
One of the senior executives from the CBOE, the Chicago Board of Exchange, is also on your board.
Yes.
Obviously he will bring with him a lot of experience too for how the equities and derivatives markets trade. And I'm sure he would have said too that unless you have speculators in the market who trade in and out of these contracts in order to make short-term profits, unless you have those, you're not going to have a lot of liquidity and turnover to perhaps even make your business model worthwhile. Do you foresee the day when you will allow speculators to come into the market, open brokerage accounts in the same way that they might do on the derivatives market, to create that liquidity and I suppose also create the interest in the market?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, just last week there was a large conference in Chicago called the Futures Industry Association, a very large conference in the market sector. And we were there talking to lots of traders, trading firms. This is a new asset to them too, but something they're just as excited about. So the way that the IP market is excited about an exchange platform, a new way to monetize IP, equally the trading market is equally excited about a new asset class that they can trade. We do believe that this will be something they'll trade very soon. We have some companies that are already members, prop trading firms like Group 1 Trading, for example, a large firm based in New York, San Francisco, and Chicago. They are interested in trading these the same way they trade other contracts. They believe it's a predictable market. It's one where there's opportunity for them. And if you think about the value to them is actually if and to the extent that operating entities are also participating. So you have 2 classes of people in our market. The liquidity providers, the market makers, there's no value in it for them unless the operating companies are in. Well, we've already demonstrated a critical mass of operating companies that are in. And so as a result, we'll see trading firms doing this very soon.
As part of the interviews that we've conducted here at IPBC Asia, one of our guests was from Novartis, pharmaceutical firm.
Sure.
And the topic, as always, when you talk about pharma companies globally, is how do you provide reasonable, even cheap access to pharmaceuticals to people in emerging markets in third world countries where they can't afford the branded versions, and yet be sure to guarantee a certain amount of profitability to the pharmaceutical firms so that they can continue to conduct their R&D to create these drugs in the first place. What creative role do you think the IPXI could play in facilitating that to ensure that both of these sometimes conflicting needs are met?
So I'm glad you've gone here because we've actually had a lot of developments with the pharma industry. We've had think tank stage sessions with many pharma companies that are traditionally couched in exclusive licensing, and for good reason. It's a different model where so much investment is in the development stage of the IP, and a single patent can be a blockbuster survival mechanism for the company. However, most large pharma companies, Novartis included, have peripheral around their portfolio, around the core pharma drug assets, including drug delivery, drug discovery, pre-therapeutic biomarkers, even devices, medical devices. things like intelligent pills and drug delivery methods that use kind of biotech inventions coupled with electronic inventions. Healthcare things like imaging, information transfer. These are all things we're talking with pharma companies about getting involved in non-exclusive licensing, something that's unfamiliar to them, but what is appealing to them is doing it in an open market, because everything that pharma companies do is so competitively driven, and it's all bilateral and done adversarial. And if we can open up a marketplace where they can use economic motivations, market-based motivations, instead of litigation-based motivations, it's something they're very interested in. And we do expect to have pharma companies as members very soon.
How soon?
Probably within the next 6 months. We've been talking with a number of them, both based in the US and in Europe as well as Asia. And I think both, not only just pharma, but medical device companies will be members of IPXI, certainly in 2014.
Now, you mentioned the adversarial nature of and bilateral nature that these license agreements are usually consummated. By launching an exchange and bringing about transparency, aren't you eating the lunch of some of the people sitting here behind me, the ones who benefit from that adversarial bilateral relationship?
We like to think not. And in fact, the adversarial relationship over certain deals will never be replaced. There are certain patents that ultimately deserve disputes. And the reason is because they're probably not deadbeat quality patents, right? Because there are, and a lot of lawyers sometimes say, aren't you trying to take our business? And I always say no, because you will always have a business around patents that deserve dispute, that deserve dual interpretation of claim scope, dual interpretation of validity. IPXI is a marketplace for quality patents, where the validity can be demonstrated to a certain probability, where economics actually become the main focus of the discussions, instead of, are these actually valid patents? And so for that, IPXI is certainly not an exchange for every patent and every type of technology. There are some that deserve an exclusive license and an exclusive deal. We recognize that. There are patents that probably should be sold to a single party for defensive use. We recognize that. The Philips portfolio, as well as the JP Morgan portfolio, are indicative of the types of portfolios that we will continue to bring to market. And people will see that not only the sponsors behind those portfolios, but the quality and size of those portfolios are meant for really creating freedom to operate and efficiencies in markets, and not the type of patents that you see that are the crux of large disputes.
And do you foresee derivatives being created, indices, exchange-traded funds, all of the things that I guess we see in the equities market?
Absolutely. We're excited about those developments. I think we will see an options facility for IPXI develop. It is something that is at the top of our priority list, and it's something that we'll continue to work on. I think as an exchange, we owe it to the exchange world, and certainly an interest of our strategic partner and investor, CBOE, that will be a pursuit of IPXI once we demonstrate proof of concept for the primary market for ULR contracts.
And finally, obviously it's never easy to launch a new exchange. There's so much work to be done. Apart from the regulatory hurdles, you have to have enough products to make it interesting. There has to be enough transactions to make it interesting to investors. Do you have deep enough pockets to make sure that you can see this through to fruition?
We do, and it's not really a matter of even deep enough pockets. It's deep enough inventory. It's deep enough critical mass of partners and members, and we have that. We certainly have that. We've demonstrated every step along the way that we can meet each milestone we need to meet to create this exchange. It's taken a lot of time, but we've done it. Increased membership that has not waned at all. Increased inventory of pipeline, portfolios that will be brought to market. That continues to grow, and again, we'll show that to the market as more and more of these offerings continue to be unrolled out. And so it's not a matter of the funds behind it. Certainly our strategic investors speak for themselves and the interest in the exchange. But what's more important is the quality of the portfolios that we'll continue to bring to market, the quality of the members that continue to join. We'll see this continue to, I think, turn heads, and finally, when people have stopped turning their back, everyone will face it and agree that this is a central platform and kind of the next natural progression of the way licensing deals are done.
And if you're unsuccessful, I suppose you could always merge with the CBOE and continue to trade your contracts on that board.
that's an interesting thought and something that would be exciting, wouldn't it?
All right, Ian McClure, thank you so much, who's a director at IPXI, the Intellectual Property Exchange International, here at IPBC Asia 2013.